All right, good afternoon and welcome to Real Talk with Ryan. Very fortunate to be joined by two outstanding students who I'll introduce in just a moment. Real Talk with Ryan is a fairly new program that we started at the end of the spring 2021 semester, just designed to give everybody a little bit of a glimpse into student life on campus. Have a variety of guests, colleagues, students, etc. Today, we are joined by the leaders, the co-chairs of the Orientation Steering Committee, Latrell Allen and Jennifer Grell. Now, you'll get a chance to meet them here in just a second. I'm going to ask them to tell us all a little bit about themselves, but they are working feverishly right now to prepare for the arrival of new students. It's a very exciting time at Cornell as we're about to begin the semester, fall 2021 semester. We're very excited. So Latrell and Jennifer, thank you so much for being with us today. And I'm going to start off by asking you each to just introduce yourself briefly, if you want to add anything that I didn't, and tell us a little bit about your role as a co-chair for the Orientation Steering Committee and how you got involved with orientation in the first place. How about Latrell? We start with you.
Yeah, well, thank you for having us as well. And as mentioned, my name is Latrell, and I'm one of the co-chairs for the Orientation Steering Committee. I am from the Chicagoland area, and I am a senior studying government in the College of Arts and Sciences. This is actually going to be my fifth orientation. I started my first one as an OL my sophomore year and just kept going on, and now I'm here at this position. And I think as a co-chair, the main thing I see as like our role is sort of just to try to facilitate everything that the committee does, because I think the committee puts in so much work from planning events to recruiting. And so I just see our role as to just help facilitate that and make decisions for the committee for the best of the orientation experience as a whole.
Great. Thanks so much for being with us today. Jennifer, how about you?
Like Latrell said, thank you so much for having us. My name is Jennifer. I am a rising senior. Well, I guess I'm a senior now.
You're a senior now. That's right.
Oh,
That feels good, doesn't it? For both of you?
I'm a senior animal science major. I was a transfer student from Binghamton University. I came to Cornell as a transfer option in the fall of 2019. This will be my third orientation. So like Latrell, I started as an orientation leader. After that was in August 2020. After that orientation was finished, then I applied to be on the Orientation Steering Committee. And I served as an Orientation Steering Committee member for one semester. And then in the spring 2021 semester, I went up to be the co-chair with Latrell. So similarly to like what Latrell was saying, basically as the co-chair, we oversee the Orientation Steering Committee, and overall the committee is the backbone of orientation. We do all the behind the scenes logistics of orientation, planning the events, making sure we get in contact with vendors, doing recruitment for orientation leaders and orientation supervisors, and basically just like helping to organize orientation leader emails that'll eventually be sent out to new students.
Thank you. So you both talked about this role of the Orientation Steering Committee, obviously with the two of you as co-chairs of that committee. I think many people might be surprised that this is such a student-led effort. So can you just tell us a little bit more? You referenced a little bit the steering committee, gets vendors, plans programs, pulls together all this stuff. It's what, 20 to 30 people or so? Give us a little bit more about the committee and how it all works together. And I mean, all this enormous amount of work that this group of students does to help welcome our new students to Cornell.
So the Orientation Steering Committee is actually 10 students.
It's just 10?
Yeah, including
I thought it was, that's why Latrell, I was thinking it was like bigger than that. So.
Oh, no.
Okay.
So it's 10 students in addition to me and Latrell. So there's 8 other students. They're comprised of sophomores and juniors, some being first years, some being transfers. So I think that's a really great mix because it provides different perspectives of orientation and just tailoring to all of the new students and their experiences as they go through orientation and just integrate to Cornell in general.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that drew me to orientation is just it's like an experience for students put on by students. And I think that's really important, and something we value a lot is the fact that we can have all these different students that are trying to create the experience for all these different students.
I also think that that's really indicative of the experience at Cornell, right? I mean, students take on so many leadership roles on this campus, which is so important because that helps everybody develop and grow and gain those skills. But it's the peer-to-peer leadership is so important. And I love seeing that starting right with the orientation experience. So that's outstanding. So orientation is a really pivotal moment for a new student, whether, you know, they're a transfer student, as Jennifer shared with her own journey, or whether a new student coming in as a first-year student. You know, talk a little bit about why you both think that that's really fundamental to this first-year experience, and for a student to, you know, as they're getting acquainted with Cornell, why that's such an important thing that we have a robust orientation program.
Well, since orientation is right in the beginning of the school year, I think that the orientation experience is definitely like foundational for a student's like integration into Cornell. It's the first way that students interact with older upperclassmen, whether they be orientation leaders or orientation supervisors. It's the first way that they meet new students and like students that'll probably be in their classes. It's their first interaction with the campus itself, and just like all the things that are available to them. So basically, we just like help to provide like basically like their first steps onto campus and their integration into Cornell as a student.
One of the things I always tell people too, as I think about this, because orientation is a finite period of time, right? Like there's this, you know, amount of time before classes start, that gets to consume a lot of people's energy, et cetera. I also encourage people not to worry if they don't feel like they've got it all figured out during orientation, right? That we really can continue the relationships that get developed during orientation, either with those upper level students that you were referencing or just with the peers. And so as just a way to help our new students maybe moderate their anxiety as they come in, not to think they've got to figure out Cornell in, you know, 6 days or whatever our window of time is. I don't know if you agree that that's good advice or not.
I remember like as an orientation leader, like I know like a lot of students, just because the campus is so big, like they were so nervous, like, oh, like where are my classes going to be? So like I know like as an orientation leader, in the past, like we've had groups that were like tailored to like their schools, like for me it was Cal's transfers, so like I just like brought them to like the general buildings that they would have their classes in to like help like provide some foundation of like where to go on the first day of classes, just so they don't get lost, just like help make it a little more comfortable and like well known.
Terrific. So we're talking about orientation, that experience for new students. You both went through this yourselves, right? I mean, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. Do you have a favorite memory yourself? Do you remember anything about your own orientation? I'm going to try and pull something out myself too from my orientation, but I'm curious if either of you have a favorite memory.
Honestly, I think convocation was like definitely something that I remember, because I just like I remember like hearing the school song for the very first time, and just like the senior leadership and like Cornell like choir organizations, just like hearing the song, like it gave me chills, because I was like, this like, oh my gosh, like I'm here.
You don't remember the content of my speech at that conversation?
I'm sorry, I must have, but I do not. And I remember like
that's okay, neither do I.
I remember there were sunflowers, and just like the whole the whole the whole event itself was just like so beautiful, and I was like, wow. As an orientation leader, my favorite like memory was bringing my group to the slope at sunset. So basically like strategically planned like a campus tour, and then like had it end like right at sundown. So like I like ended it at the slope, and like all the students were just like wow, like, and I know like for them like that was the moment, like, oh, like I'm at Cornell now, and like this is the slope.
I remember like people that I met, and I can distinctly remember that kind of thing, but I think most of my memories that are associated with orientation are sort of like as a OL or on the OSC. I think one that really sticks out to me is I think it was sophomore spring, and it was winter orientation, and like the group of students I had were spring admits, and so they were all really nervous about like feeling like they were starting late, or like they were like behind everyone on so many aspects. And so they really like used each other to like form a bond, and sort of using the OO meetings and the events to like create a bond with each other. And I remember like just sitting at dinner with them and just seeing them interact. And then like 2 weeks later, I had ran into them, and they were still like eating together and hanging out, and like thinking about like, for some people this week is like we said, like a foundation for like so many different connections. And I think I like distinctly remember just like seeing students still hanging out with students they met during O week, and like that feeling of like so much chaos going on, but you got something out of it. And I hope that everyone can get something out of it, whether that's friends or like resources to know about, or even just like the confidence to go into the semester. I think that's sort of what the kind of things that stick out to me.
That's really the best of what can happen, right? As you see those connections maintain and continue. And even if they don't, last all 4 years, or, 3 years or 2 years, or however long that just giving that confidence, I think was the word you used, to get started and feel like, maybe it helps with some of those anxieties. I think that's really, really important. I'm trying to remember some of my own experiences. So that was a long time ago, I will confess. I went to school at a place where orientation happened over the summer. So you actually went to the campus, visited for a night, and then went home, and then you moved. That's not how Cornell does it, obviously. We do it right before things start. But I do remember when I moved in, and this was a decision I made that I would not advise others to make. The day of move-in, that first night, rather than doing the campus activities that had been planned, some social activities, my roommate and I skipped out and went to a Philadelphia Phillies baseball game. I went to college outside of Philadelphia, and so we went to a baseball game. Instead of meeting everybody in our residence hall and around us, we went to a baseball game and then came back. I would not advise that because it was a great night. A lot of friendships were made that we were not then a part of. At least not. It took us a couple days to catch up when we got back in. But I do remember that very distinctly, and I remember my RA not being too happy with me that I wasn't going to be around that first night. So we've talked a lot about orientation and about first-year students and your experience and what this all means. But I know you're both seniors. You're not rising seniors. You're seniors. And are there other things about your experience at Cornell that have really shaped your experience here on campus, or as a student, and what that's been like for you that you'd like to share with us?
I think one, I'm a POSSE scholar, and so it's just like a scholarship program that sends students in cohorts. And so I think I look to my POSSE as sort of like a foundation for a lot of like my early experiences, and like giving me the building blocks to like know how to make friends and know what it feels like to have a community. I think also my job does a big part of that, and just like getting to interact with other students, seeing like from everyone from like just sophomores who are just looking for housing. I work in the off-campus living.
I was gonna say, tell everyone your job.
To like working with grad students, even working with international students. So I feel like I get to interact with so many different student populations on a day-to-day basis. And like, I guess just like meeting so many different Cornell students from so many different paths, it sort of like opened me up to like how much is like at Cornell, but also like the world outside of Cornell. So I think it gives me a lot of perspective about just like how I want to approach Cornell, but how I want to approach life. I kind of see my Cornell experience as like a bunch of small moments. Like I don't really have many things that like attending large events besides orientation. And so I like see more of my experience just like a bunch of small interactions that like equal up to this large thing.
Jennifer, how about you? So tell me a little bit more about your experience at Cornell and how that's been shaped. And then if you have a defining moment or series of moments that have been important for you?
I was a transfer. I transferred from Binghamton University. So when I first came to Cornell, I was a sophomore. I was very nervous because like I had this like preconceived notion in my head that like I'm starting late. All of my first year counterparts like already like have established friend groups. I'm behind academically because I didn't start here. And honestly, I think like the defining moment that like really shaped my Cornell experience was the dorm that I lived in my sophomore year. So I lived in a program house called the Ecology House. And I think that honestly, like getting put there by chance was honestly like the best thing that could have happened to me. I like every other sophomore, like I wanted to live on West, just to like have that like sophomore experience. But like looking back on it, like I'm so glad I didn't, just because of the experience that I had living there. I think like the turning moment of like my experience like in the Ecology House was Oswegatchie, which is our yearly retreat. So we go upstate about 2 hours away from here.
Everyone who lives there does?
It's optional. But a lot of people like to participate in it just because it's a really fun thing. Like there's no phone service, so you're forced to interact with everyone. And honestly, like that's the best part, because like you are forced to interact with everyone, and like that's how you make like such great connections. And basically you go out there and you do like team bonding things. So like they'll do like certain activities where you have to work together with one another. It like helps like create these like great friendships. And like as a result of living there and like going to that retreat, like I am still best friends with all of the people that were there. I live with 3 other people, and they were all from Ecology House.
And I can feel it coming through. That's,
I'm like professing my love to it right
now. That's terrific. Like that is the best of the residential experience, right? That a student really does find a sense of place and a sense of friendship and community. I mean, I think if that has been accomplished, then that is just wonderful to hear. And so and I should just mention for our audience, that is the goal with our residential experience, and we hope that everybody feels that way that Jennifer does. Maybe not everybody quite gets that, but nonetheless, it really is our goal that you are able to develop that sense of self and that sense of place with the community in your residential experience. So switching gears a little bit, I've asked a lot about you all and your experiences and your roles. I want to flip gears and ask for your advice, not for me, but advice for our students that may be watching, particularly new students, whether they're transfer student, first year student coming into Cornell.
I think the biggest two things that have been helpful for me as I look back are like just being patient with myself. Like I feel like I've gone through so many changes and gone through things that I didn't expect I would have to. But I think like just like having like patience with myself and being kind to myself is really important, because there are like so many experiences that you go through that really make you or can make you not be kind to yourself, or where others aren't kind to you. I think another thing is learning to say no, and just like the idea of just setting boundaries. I think especially as we transition to coming back to campus, you know, just like being back in this realm where people are like socializing. Like one thing I'm really worried about is like being able to socialize with people. Like I don't know if that's something I'll be able to do, and just like being patient with myself and like knowing that I don't have to do anything that puts me in a position that I'm not comfortable with. And so I guess centering yourself is the best thing I can say. And like everything that you do, making sure you're prioritizing what's best for you is like the main advice I have.
Trell, that's great advice. And you're giving it to students, I realize, but a lot of non-students could take that advice too. You're very wise. So thank you for sharing that. Jennifer, how about you?
Yeah, I guess piggybacking off what Latrell was saying, I definitely think that taking time for yourself and like making sure that like you're taking like time to rest and taking time to like, I don't know, like practice self-care is really important, just because like sometimes like academics can get really rigorous and intense. And I know a lot of students like feel imposter syndrome pretty heavily at Cornell. So I think like it's important to recognize that like every student feels that way, and like it doesn't make you like lesser of an individual, and like no matter what, like you're always like you're gonna do well and like you're gonna succeed. And like even though like it doesn't feel like that in the moment, it's important to like really like take care of yourself and make sure that like you're not just working all the time, and that you're actually like taking time to like enjoy yourself and enjoy the area that we're in, just because like Ithaca is like such a beautiful area. And also just like keeping in touch with nature is like a great way to like, I guess, like establish self-peace. So I think just like taking advantage of that as well, in addition to like taking care of yourself.
That's great advice from both of you. And I want to just underscore, you both really hit on this theme of being kind to yourself and being patient with yourself, practicing self-care, really trying to come to peace with the feelings that can really overwhelm someone as they begin this journey. And you even use the term imposter syndrome. And I think you mentioned that a lot of students struggle with that. Look, full confession, it's not just students that struggle with that. As a vice president of an Ivy League, I feel that same thing, and it can be real for us. And I think that your advice is so good. And I often try to reinforce that too, that everyone belongs here. No one was a mistake. There was no accidents in the admission process, and people were welcomed for their own unique talents and their own unique skills. And those aren't the same. And, in our world today, there's an awful lot of comparing to your neighbor that happens, and comparing about whether you're doing well enough in classes or doing these things. And I think the more that people just give themselves a break and give each other a break, I think that can really help to keep yourself centered. And I wanted, just add, I think practicing that kindness to yourself, but also to others, and I think we've all been through a really difficult couple of years in our country and in our world. And I think that like I said, there's an awful lot of judgment taking place, not only locally, but nationally and internationally. And I think the more that we can just withhold judgment about others' lived experiences and really just try to show kindness, and be graceful and have grace with each other, I just think it's really important all the time. And I think it's particularly important as, and Latrell, you pointed out, as we come back to, a fully in-person experience, and the transition that everyone's going to go through at some level. And so I think that's really, really important. Thank you both for that excellent advice. And I hope everyone who's listening today really takes it to heart.
We only have like 4 years here, and like while that feels like a lot, like it goes by really fast. I know for me it did. Just like take advantage of like the area that you're in, because like who knows like if this is going to be the last time that we're ever here, like once you like go on and start your career.
I think just to add on to that really quickly, I think also in terms of like taking advantage of the nature, also take advantage of like what Ithaca has to offer, you know, and invest back into like the space that we're in. Because there are a lot of clubs that you can get involved in to like help with like schools or like different, I think there are so many ways to give back to Ithaca. And so I think that's something that every Cornell student should be doing too, is like finding ways to invest back in this community that we're like a part of for this time being, you know.
All of your advice really centers on this theme that you are making an investment in this community, this campus and this community, right? Whether it's, you know, 2 years, 4 years, 5 years that you're here, that still is not a lot of time. I think one of you mentioned that in reference to, you know, what hopefully is a long and fulfilling life for everybody. But it is a lot of time still the same if you don't really invest in everything that's around here, the community, the campus, and don't just see this as a place that you come hang out for 8.5 months a year. See it as a place that you really can immerse yourself in and invest in. I think it makes the experience that much more enjoyable and rich, frankly. I'm going into my 7th year here at Cornell, so I've been here just a little bit longer than, you know, our typical student is, but I still find myself, you know, trying to do the same things. You know, what have I not yet experienced in Ithaca? I probably won't stay the rest of my life in Ithaca, and I know that. So it's, you know, what can I take full advantage of while I am here? Move-in's just around the corner, and that's speaking of stressful, that can be a very stressful day and one that is filled with anxiety. So any advice that you would give?
Get a laundry bag that has backpack straps on it. I can't stress it enough. I know that that's like very like simple advice, but like get it. It's amazing. You can get it at Target. It's like
I would have loved that when I was in college. I had to go to the basement. I was on the 6th floor as a freshman. I would have had to go all the way to the basement. I would have loved that. That's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, I will second that because that has been really helpful. I think maybe pack light. I felt like I had to bring so many things and have like so many things with me when I moved in, but I also accumulated like so much stuff that like I moved in like my parents' car, and then I had to like get a U-Haul van to get out. So I would just say don't have as many things, like don't pack as much, because I feel like you accumulate a lot of memories and moments while you're here that you may want to like have in your room too.
Well, I know we're just about out of time here, so I think we better start to wrap up. And I know you all have to get back to work, getting ready for everybody. So I just want to thank you again, Latrell and Jennifer, both for not only for being with us today and with our audience, but really for making a deep investment in your peers, in other Cornellians as they get ready to start the experience. The work you do means so much to our students, to their families, to us, the whole university community. And we just thank you very sincerely for your efforts, and all of the orientation steering committee and the orientation supervisors and all the orientation leaders. You all really do set the tone for the year. And while this year is going to be much different than last year, we've still got a few things ahead of us to navigate. We're really looking forward to all of your leadership. So just thank you for that. And to the rest of our audience, thank you for tuning in today to Real Talk with Ryan. Hope this was an enjoyable episode for you. It sure was for me. And look forward to being back with you in another segment down the road. And we'll sign off for now. So take care. Have a great day, everybody. Be well.